Where's Brian? Setting up his new computer.
Huh. And we're live. I see it on YouTube. What's up, James? Ryan,
Hey,
will
how
you
are ya?
text? Good. Ryan, will you text? What's that guy's name? Brian. Brian Friend at Brian Friend CrossFit, and ask him to come on the podcast.
Yes.
Oh, how nice of him to
There
join
he
us.
is.
How
To
nice of him
save
to
the
join
day.
us.
Were you nervous?
No. What are you taking, Sevan? Echinacea?
It's this stuff.
Oh, damn. Was that like does that help like
Yes.
turgidity?
I don't know what that word means, but
I don't know if turgidity is a word. I think turgid is. Oh no, it is.
basically, Jeff Evans started a company that sells this, and I got a bottle, and then I got addicted to it. It has cayenne pepper in it,
Oh, I love that.
and you put it under your tongue and swish it around, and I take this podcast crazy serious, you guys. You know how serious I take it? I get all wound up in crazy anxiety before I come on. I almost always try to ride the assault bike for 10 minutes, 120 calories before I come on to clear my brain. I always brew a fresh cup of coffee. I've always done my research. I've always thought about what I want to say, what I don't want to say. And then on top of that, when I get on here, I try to be as free as possible. And I try to elicit the most real conversation I can with my guests while still keeping the conversation moving. I don't have a problem with space and silence. I actually love a lot of space and silence. And I'm actually really, really, really happiest when I'm alone. That being said, I've become addicted to not only the podcast interacting with you guys, but to Brian Friend and James Hobart. It sucked that he went to the Masters competition. It was good that he took second place, but we did miss him. But this podcast probably isn't for everyone, and I want to address a couple of things here. Someone said in one of the comments the other day, you've hitched your cart to the athlete, Sevan, and you're like using other people's success to build your success. And I was like, yeah, well said, perfectly well said. And then last night at around 11 o'clock, I went on and I started watching all the YouTube content out there of all the other content creators, all the big names, all the biggest accounts in the CrossFit world that went to the CrossFit Games. And they are not hitching their carts up to the athletes. They've hitched their carts up to themselves. These videos are videos of them hugging people that they haven't seen in a long time, taking pictures with the fans, and it's everything except CrossFit content. Is that okay? Sure, it's fine. Is it real? No. Does it scratch the surface on anything? No. Are there in-depth interviews with the athletes? No. Is there anything that makes me feel like, hey, I've gone deeper into myself and know myself better after watching it? No. They're jack-off sessions. Do I have a problem with jacking off? No, I think it's great. It's a great activity. I mean, you shouldn't obsess on it. So there are two kinds of content out here. There's the people who are jacking off on themselves and stroking themselves, and it's all about their star power and what they did at the games. And that was all I could find. And then there's me, who's just using the athletes and using Hobart and using Ryan Jevning and using Matt Souza and using Brian Friend and using everyone to get ahead. So those are your choices. The guys who jack off on themselves, or someone like me who hitches my cart to other people to make myself famous. Sorry, I wish I could say that there was other choices, but there's not. So that was me jacking off on myself. Now, I want to switch over to the comments real quick. Brian, what's up, dude?
Oh, can I say a couple things?
Sure.
So last night I went to a Dave Matthews concert.
Oh, cool.
It was my 42nd Dave Matthews concert. And I played one of my favorite songs as the opener. It's called One Sweet World. It's a good opener.
Speaking of jacking off on yourself, anyone who's been to the same concert 42 times, Jesus.
So I just put this little
baby.
Yeah, there we go. So I just put this little 12-second clip up on a story, and I was amazed or fascinated or something with the number of CrossFitters who like Dave Matthews Band, including Matt O'Keefe, who actually saw him play at a little bar in Charlottesville, Virginia in the early 90s before anyone knew who they were, which is not surprising if you know Matt O'Keefe. He seems to always have little stories like that. But it was actually pretty cool to get that response. So if there's any of you guys out there, that's cool.
And I'd like to say something about Matt O'Keefe. I'm reading this book, Bounce, and it says that if you're not failing, you're not getting better. And I totally, totally agree with it, that you need to be getting pushed way, 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 way outside your boundaries. You need to be struggling no matter how good you are at something. And I'm concerned for our dear friend of the podcast, Matt O'Keefe, because this fucking guy only knows how to deal with winners. All the athletes he deals with are winners, winners, winners. And so I think Matt O'Keefe should reach out to Colton Mertens, who didn't do as well as Justin Medeiros, and he should learn to work with Colton Mertens because he's going to get fucking soft bouncing back and forth between Matt Fraser and Justin Medeiros. They're slam dunks for him. And if he's going to be a world-class agent, he needs to work with people. Let me tell you, Colton Mertens is a good piece of clay. There's a lot to work with. But I challenge you, Matt O'Keefe, to work with someone besides these greats, because they're making you soft, O'Keefe. Disappointed. I'm really disappointed Hobart didn't flinch at all. I thought that was pretty good. Thank you, Hobart, for a last minute flinch. I had to beg for it.
Hobart looks like he's about ready to captain a plane today.
Yeah, these headphones are so big, and I already have a giant, stupid head. So
you have a beautiful
That's
face.
just the
Don't
way
ever
it
say
is.
that about your head. You might have a giant, stupid head, but there's a beautiful face on there with impeccable skin. Which brings me to my next thing before we get to what you guys are all here for, is to hear Brian talk about the CrossFit Games. I want to tell you guys about like something that someone said, these 4 comments someone made in a row. First of all, if you make 4 comments in a row, I get it. You hate me. You're watching the podcast because you hate yourself and you're using it to irritate yourself. You're like the guy who like scratches yourself until you bleed. I get it. I've done that to myself before. But this guy's name is Aaron J. Met. And these are his 4 comments in a row. Andrea Nisler, too good for Sevan Podcast. Okay. I have no argument there. None. 0. I don't know if anyone, I'm so thankful that everyone comes on the podcast. And Brian and I are actually in shock every time we talk on the phone that people come on. It's kind of, maybe shocked isn't the right word. Very excited. Like I was titillated when I bugged James today and he said he would come on. The only person I take for granted is Brian. I take him for granted. I don't take Ryan or Matt for granted. Sevan, then this person posted, Sevan hates on the United States too much. It's out of control. And that's very revealing of yourself, because I don't hate on the United States. And that means you have your radar all fucked up. That means you have your radar all fucked up. I actually care about this country more than you could ever imagine, because I have 3 little boys that are going to grow up here, and it's been an amazing place where I've been rewarded for insanely hard work. So you should check your radar. That means you're one of those people, and there's a lot of them out there, who hears something and then spins it around in their head. Then this 3rd comment, even Brian is uncomfortable with Sevan's constant politics he injects into these conversations. And then someone replied, I'm fucking uncomfortable too. And I don't know if Brian's uncomfortable or not uncomfortable, but I'm uncomfortable too, guys. So we agree there. And then we get to the final comment. Sevan talking about girls' looks. And then it's like some sort of emoji, like a sad face. I will talk, if you don't like someone talking about girls' looks or boys' looks or penises or vaginas, or if you're disgusted by the human anatomy, or if you're not into booty shorts, or if you don't think working out is cool, or if you don't think nutrition is cool, if you don't think anything that makes human bodies better and perform better and live longer and be able to wipe their ass longer into their twilight, then this podcast is not for you. I have no problem saying that Guy is hot as shit and that Reagan Huckabee's a fucking 10. Although I don't like to use numbers. Sorry, I retract the 10. Like, this podcast is not for you then. We talk about people who work on their bodies 24 hours a day. Their sleep, their nutrition, their movement, their mindset is everything so their bodies perform. If you don't want me talking about people's bodies and the shapeliness of it, my wife was ecstatic when she started CrossFit and her ass started getting bigger. If that offends you, this podcast is not for you. Don't listen to us. I love all of these people's bodies. Brian, how did you do in your picks, dude?
Moving on.
As usual, better on the women's side than the men's side.
Say that again. As usual, better on the women's side.
Yep, that's pretty much always the case.
Well, you kind of had a slam dunk with Tia, right?
Not count. Yeah. Yes, but even excluding her.
Okay. The list I'm seeing, how I don't know how to use spreadsheets. I only see the men.
There's a tab on the bottom that says women.
Oh yeah, yes. I see it. Don't be a dick. Don't be a dick.
That was for that. I just
could have
wanted
texted
to.
me that. You could have texted me that on the side.
I wanted to put that comment in there for that guy who was giving you so much love earlier.
Which guy?
You
In
know,
the
the
YouTube
guy.
comments.
Yeah.
Paul Luis, hey Rod, $45 of my favorite kind of money, the silver shit from the UK. Thanks for the amazing content these last few weeks and months. This should be used once Brian asked Danielle Brandon on a date. Ooh. Ooh, he don't got the balls. He don't got the balls.
Did you guys see that road trip she's doing? Where do you think she's coming?
Chicago?
Oh, damn.
She's driving back to Vegas, isn't she? Because she probably doesn't want to get on a plane and wear a mask again.
Well, there's different routes to get there.
Hobart, do you think you could beat Kyle Kasperbauer in an arm wrestling match?
Yes.
Well, you heard it
That's
here.
confident.
Would you guys rather watch them arm wrestle, or would you rather watch them get in the boxing ring like Josh and Mr. Hepner? Dude, do you know Jacob Hepner, Hobart?
Yeah, well, not terribly well, but yeah, like if we saw each other, we're like, hey, Jacob, hey, James.
He sucks.
Oh, wow.
I didn't like him, and then he came on my podcast and just fucking charmed the shit out of me.
Yeah, that's devastating.
Devastated.
He's a really smart guy, which is, I always I think he's like math smart, and I always like learning those things about people.
Yeah, he's a clear thinker. He's a clear thinker for sure. Do you want to start with the women or the dudes?
Doesn't matter.
Okay, let's go with the women since you did better there, and then we'll end the show with you on a bad note, and then you can go play frisbee golf or Conan board game or whatever you play. The Village of Conan.
Okay, I love it.
You play board games?
Oh, go get him, Hobart. Get him.
I do.
Are you a Settlers of Catan guy?
Well, that's what he was referencing, but he called it Conan.
That makes a lot of sense.
I hate it that you know that game. How do you know that game, Hobart?
Because I'm situationally aware.
Actually, we somehow it came up with Andrea Nisler, and she mentioned that her and her fiance like to play board games, but they don't play that one because it's only a 3-player or 4-player game. And I mentioned to her casually that I actually created a version of a 2-player game for it, and then a bunch of people on Instagram DM'd me asking for the explanation for that game, for the 2-person version.
That was great.
Yeah, get him. Whew. I was trying not to say anything. I was trying so hard not to say. Hey, Ryan, what's that thing? It says Jason Miller, 10% bonus followers if you. What is that like? Do you see that? And I can't. What's weird is
essentially he's just saying that if you grow man bun, Sevan, that you'll get 10% more followers on everything.
Oh, and someone pinned that to the top of the comments. Thanks. Asshole. Okay, I'll grow a man bun. I'll do it. Elisa Papa, $10. You guys stop giving us money. We can't get the show done. And it makes me always want to kind of cry a little bit. Brian would beat the shit out of me. Are you kidding me? Why do you guys? I am 49. I'm the least fit. Brian's like a good CrossFitter. I'm like, I do muscle ups and ride the fucking assault bike and take Seraflow.
You think he would beat you up?
Brian?
Yeah.
Yeah, easily.
I don't know about that.
Easily.
James,
I'm like a cat. I'm like a cat though, James. He'd probably lose an eye or something. Like it wouldn't be worth it.
Yeah.
But in the end,
You'd pull out a lot of hair or something.
Crazy shit like that. Bite off a finger. No shit.
That's so good.
He's like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. That's how he fights.
Oh, what a great reference.
I like to think of myself as more like the Tasmanian devil, but I see your. Okay, so enough of this nonsense. We're too far into the show. Now we're doing exactly what I was complaining about. Those people were doing the other the other guys. Not complaining, observing.
You're answering questions from the people.
So you had, do you want to start at the bottom or do you want to start at the top?
Top.
Okay, Tia Toomey.
Not much to say. She was as advertised. Maybe her most dominant performance yet. I mean, it's difficult to assess that because of the different seasons that we've had, the different structures to the games, and the fact that, and this is something that we have to address when we're talking about the women's field, is it's arguable, and maybe even not that arguable, that 6 of the 10 to 15 fittest women in the world didn't do this competition. Sarah Sigmundsdottir, Jamie Simmons, Cara Saunders, Carrie Pierce, Brooke Wells, and Bethany Shadburn all either were unable to start the season, unable to start the games, or unable to finish the games. And I would say that if you extend that number to 15, it's pretty difficult for you to tell me that those 6 women are not amongst the 15 fittest on earth.
And the only reason why that matters, like, hey, a sport is a sport is a sport. It can happen to everyone. It doesn't degrade anyone's place. The only reason why Brian's bringing this up, I think, is for justification if any of his spots were off.
In either direction.
He couldn't foresee, right?
No, in either direction. So, we'll get to some examples of that both ways.
Like if Tia's pregnancy test would have come back that she was pregnant 2 days before the games and she couldn't compete, that wouldn't be your fault that she didn't take first place.
Of course not. And neither would it be anyone who predicted her anywhere on the leaderboard, really.
Laura Horvath, number 2.
Yeah, so obviously I picked her second, and I got a lot of messages saying that was a bad pick and that she's overhyped. That one year was a fluke and whatever. And I should just start off the bat here by saying pretty much every person on the list, women and men, someone out there messaged me and said, you messed that one up. She's going to do way better than you thought, or he's going to do way worse than you think, or whatever. And obviously some of those people will be right, and majority of them were wrong. But, if you hit your cart to one person in the field and say, hey, man, love your picks, but this one, you're way off the money. So, and someone saying that about every single pick, there's going to be some that are right. And we can talk about that and why I think some of the athletes, I did misgauge the potential for some of the athletes so dramatically. In the case of Laura, she looks very dominant. I mean, she loses to Tia by 250 points or something, but then she's 100 and she's 80 points, like 80 points clear of Annie. It's a pretty significant margin. I was expecting that, that margin. I was not expecting Tia's margin of victory to be so big. I think I'd said like 100 to 120 points. But again, a lot of the women who could have snuck up and taken, like she took a couple 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nds. And maybe those are 6, 7, 8, 9ths if the full field of women, Carrie Pierce's, Bethany Shadburn, Cara Saunders were healthy and able to compete. Anyway, Laura did great relative to the field, but we, Tommy Marquez and Patrick Clark and I put up an article on the Morning Chalk Up today. And James, I'm pretty interested to hear what you think about this. And we were just doing takeaways from the games, kind of big picture stuff. And one of the things that I had written about was that despite a depleted women's field, the competition was very compelling and sets up for an even brighter future. And I just, as a bullet point in there, mentioned that Laura Horvath reasserts herself as a force to be reckoned with and dominated the field other than Toomey. And this guy responds to me and says, she is a phenomenal athlete, but how can you expect, Haley Adams, Kristen Holt, and Christy Aramo to compete on the same level when you have events that involve pig flips, 1-rep max lifts, back-to-back heavy lifting events? Hold on, James. Just hold on.
I can't believe you're reading this.
No, it's because it's an interesting thought. The totality of the thought is interesting. Pegboards, he references her background in rock climbing, heavy deadlifts, heavy yoke carries, and then heavy barbell lunges. And at the omission of, he includes things like Mary, Atalanta, legless rope climbs, strict or deficit handstand push-ups, all of the things that he considers Horvath's weaknesses.
Where do you begin?
I'm biting my tongue, James. Go.
I don't know. Where do you begin with that? I just think one of the most impressive things now is Laura's been second across 2 essentially different events. And, the games can't test the same exact things every year. But obviously, I think the games does a really nice job of covering a lot of bases in terms of testing fitness for the world's fittest. And I feel like when you say that, like, oh, how could you expect to do well, so and so to do well when there's pig flips? Well, so and so should be fitter or stronger or whatever. I just think that's such a bad argument.
Do you know why the decathlon is so cool? Because there's 10 events. Do you know why CrossFit's so cool? Because there's 10 million events.
Infinite.
We
Yeah.
just slap them across the face with our dicks. Like, not in a mean way either, but like that has its place and this has its place. Like, that's crazy. Okay, then what's his excuse going to be next year when when everything's running in the games and Tia still wins? It's just
Exactly. And what's his explanation for a Tia or a Matt or a Rich or an Annie Thorsdottir? When you see, that's why it's so impressive when you see athletes who are repeat podium top 10 winners, because they've succeeded across a diversity of tests constantly. I mean, get him back to the level one.
Hey, and this is a thing. I'll try to be nice. I've already been a dick for 15 minutes of this episode. I get what he's saying. He's looking at it, but he's just looking at this one CrossFit Games. You have to look at the totality of what CrossFit is, the methodology, the training, and just the fact that we are this is a GPP program, General Physical Preparedness Program, that is for people who want to live a long time and who want to not be caught off guard in life, and especially for first responders who possibly their fitness could be the difference between life and death. And when a stopwatch was put to it, we turned it into a sport. And that's what it is. And so you have to be ready for everything.
Yeah, obviously I agree with you guys. This guy, he loves putting comments up like that I think are like first blush responses without really giving a more broad thought to the picture that he's trying to paint.
I just feel like that argument, and I do get what he's saying. I just feel like that argument is like, how do you expect me to succeed in life if I have to do things that I'm not good at? It's terrible.
James, is
sorry.
there anyone in the world, you're going to hate this question.
Yep.
Because you hate attention, but is there anyone in the world who has a broader scope of understanding about the far outer reaches of competition versus what the roots are of CrossFit than you?
I'm sure
understanding
there is.
and experience.
I'm sure there is. I've been very fortunate to compete a long time, but also train and coach everyone from teenagers to my 60-year-old mother and everyone in between. So I think that's really helped me have a much broader perspective of CrossFit and all of its applications. But I'm sure there's someone out there who has a better understanding. You
live in the games world, but your tree is in the games world, but all your roots are in the training program. Do you is that hard? I mean, like, stuff about CrossFit that people who only watch the games can't even imagine, and so they're missing so much of the picture. Is that hard for you? Do you try to unfuck every person you cross that doesn't see the totality of the picture?
No, I don't, because I think even for me, it took me a long time to really understand what the breadth of CrossFit actually is when we say, hey, it can be for anyone, it might not be for everyone. And then how broad CrossFit is an application in terms of relative intensity. And I didn't realize that until my mom started doing CrossFit in her mid 50s. And I had already been doing CrossFit and competing and on seminar staff for 5 years. But when I saw it change her life, that's when I really understood, like, again, just how broadly applicable it can be, and that the games is the tip of the spear. And I think it's really cool if the games allows someone to dip their toe in the water and start to ask more questions about CrossFit and be curious about it.
It's interesting. I don't remember what year it was, 2016 or 17. Greg started basically pulling all the members of HQ together, and he would say, "Hey, we have 100,000 trainers out there who've taken their L1, and I'm not sure if the majority of them know that they have the cure for type 2 diabetes." And when he said that, I realized, fuck, half the staff here don't know it. And probably the only reason I know it is because I was so close to Greg and I was hearing it always pelted into my ear. So I see your point. Like, it does take a long time to realize that, hey, it's cool that it crowns Justin Medeiros as the fittest man in the world, but really it's a more potent tool. It's so interesting. Haley Adams, number 3.
Yeah, had her third. She finished 5th. And the thing about Haley was we'd seen her compete twice at the games as an individual, but it was the 2019-2020 seasons. And in 2019, she made the top 10. So that was the worst she could do was 10th. She ends up finishing 6th. takes Rookie of the Year. It was a very impressive rookie season. The next year, she makes the top 5 after 7 tests on the online version of the games. She goes to the games. She finishes 4th, and it's a great start to her career. She's got a 6th and a 4th in 2 very different formats. So now we're coming to this year where we're wondering, okay, against a deeper field and a deeper test, 15 events instead of 7 and 6 to get to the final 5 and final 10 that she had to do. How would she do? And so, I thought she had the potential to finish on the podium. I still think she has the potential to finish on the podium. And I'm pretty happy with the 5th place performance of her relative to a 3rd place prediction.
Hobart, we were having a podcast the night before on Saturday night. And Brian was saying, I think Brian was saying that Haley could still make the podium. And I said, there's no fucking way. And someone commented in the comment section under the name Rich Froning, yeah, she will make the podium. And I looked at the picture in the avatar and I couldn't tell, or in the profile picture, and I couldn't tell what it was. And so all the people in the chat go, oh my God, Rich is here. And people are like, Rich isn't here. That's not Rich. It's a fake account. And then the person posted, hey man, I'm sitting in an ice bath right now. This is me. And so I interject and I said, hey, you fucking knuckleheads. There's no fucking way that's Rich Froning. If you think that's Rich Froning, I'll eat my sock. So the podcast is over. And I walk back into my house and I pick up my phone and I look and there's a text from Rich and it says, start eating your sock, boy.
Well, and he and I were both wrong in that regard. And you were right. She did not make the podium. She didn't do as well as on the workouts on Sunday as I had expected that she would do. And she finished where she belonged in the relative to the field this year again.
He probably thought Hobart was going to win Masters too.
I tried really hard.
You did great.
Thank you.
You made it exciting. Number 4, Cara Saunders.
Withdrew due to COVID.
Okay, so that was your pick, but she withdrew. So what do we do here to score you as any good at this? Do we move everyone up one?
Scroll down.
Okay, I see it. Number 4, Katrin Doder, David Doder, Katrin David Doder.
Yes, I'd originally ranked her 5th. With the removal of Cara from the competition, she would bump up to the 4th spot. She ends up finishing 10th, so I would consider this a miss. This is her first time not being inside the top 5 in 6 years, and so for her, it's a question is that potential to have a top 5 finish against the current caliber of women, something that she's going to be able to do again. And like we mentioned, there were still potentially 6 other women missing from this competition that you could see beating her. So a 10th to 15th place finish this year. She's going to need to improve some things relative to the rest of the women if she wants to get back into that top 5 in the upcoming seasons.
I wonder, and we don't have to get too much into this, if we're watching her twilight, if we're watching her just decline, or if she had trouble training this year, or if just the competition has gotten that steep. It is uncharacteristic of her to finish 10th.
Similar, I mean, to that guy's point, and it's not an excuse. It's just a fact. Like, she's similar to Haley Adams in the fact that certain strength elements, she's not up to par with the best women in the world. And so she's going to take a hit on some of those events. So if this was a relatively heavier games, then it's not that surprising that she'd do a little bit worse compared to some of the other years.
Renata Novotna. I'm guessing that's Indian. James, you're going to compete. Are you going to compete next year? It was awesome to watch you.
I appreciate that. I plan to.
Awesome. And Casper Bauer moves up, right?
He does, which I wish he didn't, because I would like to compete against him again. But we had an awesome time competing that weekend.
Would you say you're friends?
Yeah.
Do you have his phone number in your phone?
I do.
Oh, all right. Number 5, someone that Hobart gave Brian a few eye rolls when he placed Kristen Holta in this list and the all-time top 40 list. Kristen Holta, who retired at 35.
First of all, we will update the top 10 lists at some point relatively soon based on this year's results. But yeah, so I originally had her 9th. 4 of the women that were ranked ahead of her, Cara, Carrie Pierce, Brooke Wells, and Bethany Shadburn, all didn't finish the competition for whatever reason. So she ends up 5th amongst the people who did finish the competition. She finishes 4th. Obviously, she's incredible. She's been getting better into now her mid-30s. She was obviously very close to making the podium for the second time in her career. I would still say that the one knock against her resume, I guess, is that she hasn't podiumed in a year where there was the full breadth and depth of test. The only time she ever podiumed was in that 2019 season, which we've talked about a lot. But that doesn't take away from the other 4 or 5 finishes she has of 7th or better at the games, all in a row, by the way.
So you predicted Kristen Holte to take what place, Brian? 5th?
Originally 9th, of the remaining competitors, 5th.
Oh, right. Okay. So you only missed that one by 1, according to my rating. Sorry, Hobart, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, does her finish make you reevaluate 2019 and its impact on athlete performance?
What do you mean?
Like, I feel like you've been really harsh. Like, if you did well in 2019, Brian Friend kind of thinks you're a chump. And so I'm just curious to know, like, after this year, does this year and seeing how some of those 2019 athletes performed, does this kind of change your view of it?
I mean, we look at the 2019 women. Tia was 1st. Kristen was 2nd. Jamie Green was 3rd. She didn't compete this year. Katrin was 4th. We know she's had a string of top 5 finishes. Carrie Pierce was 5th. She's had a string of finishes up near the top. Haley Adams has had nothing but 6th, 4th, and 5th now in her career. Amanda Barnhart's last 3 years, 7, 7, 9. Bethany Shadburn, that's an outlier year for her right now, but we didn't get to see her compete this year. And Turi Helgadottir, who had her best finish that year, but her second best finish this year at 13th place. And then Danielle Brandon would have been 10th, and she was 11th this year. So, no, the thing is, none of those placements are that far out of character relative to some of the other performances that we've seen. But when you look at the people who just barely missed the cut, and it's Annie Thorsdottir, Laura Horvath, Brooke Wells, Sam Briggs, Sarah Sigmundsdottir, all who also definitely have top 10 potential, and we didn't get to see them do the second half of the test. I wonder how many of those women would have been able to push some of the people who that's their only or their best career finish or their only top 10 finish down a little bit as the weekend wore on.
I just want you to know I asked you that question just so you could look really smart, and you did.
Nick of Time says to Hobart, nice headset, Hobart.
Thanks.
Thank you, Nick, for the $5. I think that guy's donated $5 100 times. Good dude. Danielle Brandon.
Originally, I had her ranked 10th. She finished 11th, but when you omit all of the people who were ahead of her, I would have had her ranked 6th, and therefore I feel like I kind of missed on this one, and then she did a little bit worse in the same way that, Katrin Davidsdottir did. But Danielle Brandon's completely different. I think that unlike Katrin, she's still trying to find out how good she can really be, and she has some potential and room for growth. Obviously, the week was very challenging for her in some different ways because she was forced to be separate from everyone, forced to take all those tests, which to me, that seems very stressful to just have to show up every single day and take a couple tests and not know if this test, when you know that there's such thing as false positives out there, is just going to end your season out of the blue. She's seen her 2 best friends be sent home. One of them actually sick. One of them tested sick. So it was a lot weighing on her. I think that this is about appropriate for her this year, and it's a good building block, but I think she has potential to improve upon it going forward.
Do we know that Carrie Pierce never had do we know she was asymptomatic?
As far as I know.
Interesting. We should find that out. I'll DM her and see if she'll respond. Number 7, Mallory O'Brien.
Finished 7th. So kind of right there.
Sorry. There's a good question here. Back to Danielle Brandon. Where does she rank in Brian's heart? Number 7, Mallory O'Brien.
I don't know if that list's ever coming out.
That's the list we need to see.
Number 7, Mallory O'Brien.
Yeah, incredible. She was the rookie of the year, and in her presentation of that, we recognize that it was obviously amazing to make the games at 17 years old, but to have a top 10 finish, regardless of who's in the field and who's there, it's still, if you just look at her finishes across the week and some of the performances that she had, I mean, the wall walk thruster performance that she had maybe get outshined because it was earlier in the week relative to some of the other storylines that developed for the women. But that was incredible. And that's the kind of just mental toughness and grit and willing to suffer and hurt that I saw from her at the Granite Games when she was stringing off 3 straight event wins. She's now won a thruster workout at the Granite Games and at the CrossFit Games. And to me, if you're going to like, the reason I'm not any better at CrossFit than I am is because I never do thrusters because I absolutely hate them. She's basically saying she's amongst the best, if not the best in the world at the one workout that 9 times CrossFit Game champion Rich Froning has said, if you're ever just going to do one workout for one movement for the rest of your life, make it the thruster.
Is that true? He said that?
Yeah.
Hobart, do you agree, coming from the CrossFit training space?
I think that's a good pick.
What's second place, Hobart? How about the burpee?
I mean, I would say, honestly, if you're going to thruster, yeah, maybe burpee or deadlift. But if you're thrusting and you're taking it from the ground, you can kind of get like a twofer. So I'll give you burpee.
Someone said, Interceptor 11 said one of Carrie's posts suggested she was feeling sick. And thank you, Interceptor, for the way you worded that. You know, sometimes not on this podcast, which is kind of crazy how nice everyone is. But that's like the kind of thing in the comments in YouTube, someone be like, hey, dipshit, get prepared next time and look at her Instagram. She was sick. So I appreciate the participation, like we're all equal instead of I'm a dipshit. Mallory O'Brien, when I see her name, I just think of Jacob Hepner's chick.
Olivia Kerstetter.
Yeah. Did you see this young lady, Mr. Hobart?
This is the young lady who snatched 202, right?
Yes, sir. And won the event.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It is crazy, right?
Yeah.
James,
will I ever snatch 202?
Yes.
Woo!
We're going to get you there.
Hey, and I don't think I'm not even gonna say it. That's good though. I'm excited to see what's gonna happen to her. Hepner is saying that she's gonna do teen one more year. I think a lot's gonna change this year. The great Annie Thorsdottir. Holy shit. Mama.
I mean, this whole season for Annie has been just an exploration of the unknown. At every stage of the season, her and her camp have that guy who just donated is a cool dude, by the way.
He looks like Conan the Barbarian, Butch Elgin.
What a great name.
He was very helpful for me at the games this past year because we were doing a lot of stuff in between events, and he would just post up at one spot on the rail by the North Park so that I could get into a good vantage point, just showing up a minute before the events a lot of that time. So thank you, Butch.
I'd like to ask his mom and dad how they came up with the name Butch. Like, how do you name your kid Butch?
Okay. Annie. So Annie, every stage of the season, she's kind of exceeded her own expectations and surprised herself. And obviously that was the case at the games too. I mean, we saw the look of expression of surprise on her face when she hit that snatch. And we heard some of her interviews where she said, I didn't know. Like my chest to bar pull-ups are one of the last things that came back for me. I wasn't sure how 90 would go. End up doing great in that event and just great overall on the weekend. So she did better than I had expected. I almost, and I hate when people say this actually, but I almost wrote an article called The 4 Women That Could Podium Besides Tia. And I would have included her on that list for the same reason I included Hopper and Medeiros on the men's side, is that I just didn't know. We just didn't know how good she could be less than a year removed from pregnancy. And so obviously it was very, the community loves Annie, and for good reason. And so it was really cool that she was able to do this well this year. And I think basically surpass and exceed everyone's expectations and redefine what is possible after giving birth.
Go back to what you said about her saying her pull-ups were the last thing to come back. Was it pull-ups in general or just chest to bar pull-ups? And then I got something to say about that.
She had said that the chest to bars were one of the last things, but like even bar muscle ups right before, I don't remember, it was the quarterfinals or semifinals, maybe semifinals. Was it quarterfinals? Anyway, she had said like there's just things that she wasn't comfortable doing them yet, and then she was forced to do them in whatever stage of competition it was, and she was able to do them.
I asked because when my wife was pregnant with the kids, she would set PRs with like power cleans, squatting, snatching. But one thing she stopped doing when she was pregnant was pull-ups, and it totally caught me off guard. But she said that she would feel a tugging at her stomach, and it created, I think the word is diastasis, but it's basically a separation of the stomach muscles. And she said that pull-up movement, when I guess it's when your feet come in front of you when you're doing a pull-up, and your core tightens, she would feel tugging and separation of those muscles. So she stopped doing pull-ups during her pregnancy, which is not one that you hear a lot. At least, usually it's like, hey, don't go upside down, or don't do double unders, or don't do burpees. But my wife pretty much flourished in everything, but pull-ups are one of those things that she gave up during pregnancy too. Emma Carey.
I think Emma Carey is one of the athletes in the women's field that gets overlooked a lot this year for what she was able to do. I mean, if not for Mal O'Brien, everyone would be talking about Emma Carey being 17 years old, making the final cut, having a third place finish at the games, and a couple of top 10s in addition to that. I think of this games for her was very similar to Jason Hopper, where she had a few good workouts, but overall it was frustrating for her. She wants to be better. She thinks she should be doing better. And she had some workouts that really challenged her and left her considerably behind the top women in those respective events. I think what she ended up finishing 16th here is a pretty good, an incredible finish at that age. And she showed I think she showed a lot of mental toughness over the course of the weekend. And that one workout that Mal O'Brien won, she was third place in that workout. Only Tia Claire Toomey and Mal beat her. So again, I would consider that a pretty impressive performance against that field of women. And I think that like Mal, she's got a very bright future ahead of her and a lot to build on coming out of this week.
Yeah, I agree. I agree and disagree. Like, I guess maybe you agree and disagree with what you said too, with the way you worded it. She would have gotten a lot more attention if it wasn't for the fact that Mal O'Brien was also a younger lady who's in the mix and tearing shit up. But that being said, she still did get a lot of attention. She got more attention than Travis Mayer. Gabriella Magawa. So impressed by her.
Yep. So this is one of the athletes on the list that did a little better than I'd projected. I originally had her 14th. If you drop out all those other women, I would have had her 10th, but still she improved on that and finished 6th. It was a very, very good week for her. She's pretty strong for especially for her age at only 22. And so, I'm still kind of wrestling with that notion that this was a heavy games. Like there were a lot of heavy implements. The weird thing about that is that, when we talked to Hopper, he mentioned that a lot of the heavy implements were paired with high skill things like big volume of ring muscle ups or chest bar pull-ups or freestanding handstand push-ups or pegboards or rope climbs. So you really, if you want to finish in the top 6, like Gabby did, you had to be more than strong. Like you had to be good at a lot of other things as well. So I think that, and then when you're thinking about someone like Katrin Davidsdottir, and can she get back to being in the top 5? And we've already mentioned Laura Horvath, Haley Adams, Mal O'Brien, and Gabby Magawa that are all, very young and still getting better, being in her way of people who beat her this year and will still be coming back next year. And then, yes, there's people like Emma Carey that are, obviously didn't do as well as her this year, but will also still be getting better. You want to finish in the top 5 in the women's field in upcoming years, it's going to be really difficult to do.
I agree. Sorry, you have 2 lists here and you're very organized, and I kind of fucked up your organization, Brian. I'm sorry. I seriously am, because I jumped from one list to the other list. So I just want to go back to 3 people that we overlooked. And we touched on Carrie Pierce, greatest American CrossFitter ever. Is that female?
It's either her or Kristen Clever.
Okay. And then we skipped over Brooke Wells, and that would be another one that's going to cause problems for anyone who wants to be in the top 5, correct?
Assuming that she can come back from that injury, we don't know when that will be, but I think she'll be able to come back. And yeah, she's top 10 in the world for sure.
Hobart, is she coming back?
I sure hope so. I didn't hear much about it. I just think it's amazing. She still finished 20th, and withdrew.
Oh, by the way,
I hope she comes back.
Someone in the YouTube comments, I said that the doctor that rushed out to her within seconds of her injuring herself was a world-class orthopedic surgeon who went to Harvard. And this person said, no, he didn't. He went to Tufts. Big difference. And I want to tell you 2 things. First of all, you're fucking wrong. He did go to Harvard. And he went to Tufts. So I'm right and you're wrong. And you're right. There is a big difference between Tufts and Harvard. Harvard's a shithole. Go look at all the fraud that's going on at Harvard in their medical fucking department. Start with their fucking stem cell research in the cardiology department. They have the fucking godfather of fucking stem cell research over there. He's published 31 papers, and they've all been retracted and been considered fraudulent. Don't fucking tell me that there's a big difference between Tufts and Harvard and imply that this fucking shithole racist college is better than Tufts. Bethany Shadburn.
But the last thing I want to say about Brooke Wells is, I think she was pretty disappointed in her finish last year because she finished 5th, but she was 5th out of 5 at the stage 2 of the game. So to lose, you basically lost to the rest of the women once you made it there. And she barely had lost to Haley Adams. Carrie Pierce beat her, Katrin beat her. And she was set up this year to definitely beat Katrin and to possibly beat Haley. And you could have made an argument that if she'd finished 5th this year or 6th this year, that it was actually a better performance and finish for her than it was last year, taking 5 out of 5 after getting into the top 5. So that was really, I think, a bummer for her. And James, she finished 20th because at that point in the competition, there were only 20 athletes left.
Okay. But I still think that's
her
amazing.
points, even after having to withdraw, would have placed her either 12th or 13th.
That's crazy.
792. She would have been, 13th place behind Emma McQuaid with those points. But that's how CrossFit's always done it, is once you have to withdraw, then you just drop down to the lowest placing of the remaining athletes.
James, have you ever trained with Laura Horvath?
A little bit. She came out to Reebok for a little while, a long time ago.
And what did you think?
She's super awesome, fit person, super nice. I'm really happy to see her back in 2nd place. I don't think she's a fluke athlete whatsoever. Yeah, there you go.
I mean, did you know when she came out there, were you like, oh, fuck?
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure we did some workouts where she used men's weight and beat us.
Dude, that's an important part of the story. When I threw you an alley-oop and then you fucking missed the dunk and I had to come fucking like hand it to you and let you get a free throw.
It was a little build-up.
All right. Tia Toomey, have you worked out with her?
I have not. All
right. So one of the greatest females that you've ever worked out with is Laura Horvath.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Matt Souza, although we are not worthy of Carrie Pierce, Brooke Wells, and Bethany Shadburn, it would be awesome to have them on the podcast, by the way. It'd be great to pick their name. Pick their brains. Danny Spiegel.
You had mentioned Bethany Shadburn before that.
Okay.
And Bethany, I think of, obviously you never want to see anyone withdraw, but I think of all the athletes that had to withdraw or miss this competition this year, this is the one that people were maybe most bummed about because the hype around her was really big after beating Carrie at the West Coast Classic. A lot of people who know her well know she's competed at the games before, but not always healthy. She seemed to be healthy, physically healthy this year, her body, her joints, things like that. And a lot of people were expecting her to threaten for podium, top 5. I'd ranked her, I guess, eighth, and I think that she had every potential to be that or better this season, but we didn't get to see it. So, I hope obviously that she'll come back and be as good this next season as she could have been or was poised to be this year. But I think that was probably the one that bummed people out the most.
Since you guys have listened this far into the podcast, I'll tell you something that I didn't want to say in the beginning. I think this next week coming up, we have lined up on the podcast, along with at least one UFC fighter on Monday morning. We have BKG, Rich Froning, and Sarah Sigmundsdottir all in the queue. They will not be better than James Hobart, but together, all 3 of them together, maybe. Okay, so sorry. I apologize, Bethany, for skipping over you. Danny Spiegel.
Yeah, again, I don't know that she's necessarily in the same tier of athletes based on her performances over the past couple of years as Akara, Carrie, Brooke, and Bethany, or even Sarah and Jamie. But she's a relevant female in the field. And again, she had to withdraw before the cuts this season, so we didn't get to see kind of the full capacity of her. We know she has some lingering foot injuries, and she had a couple injuries during the sanctional season, I think with her shoulder. So we just are waiting for her to get healthy enough to actually finish the season and see where she falls amongst the rest of the women, and we didn't get to see it this year.
Brian, Jessica Dademash said, I think Brian should do an update with how close he was with the predictions for the outcome of the games in athlete order. Hey, Jessica, that is what this show is trying to do, but I have jacked it all up. You need paper and pencil if you want to put it together and follow along. But I jacked it all up, but that's what this show is. Number 16, Amanda Barnhart. Go ahead.
I had her 16th originally. When you bump out all the women that withdrew, she would have been 11th on my rankings, and she finished 9th. And this is actually an athlete who I got probably the most flack for about ranking her this low coming into the games, but I just wasn't sure. 7th and 7th the last 2 years, those seasons were different, and I felt like I wasn't sure if she was a top 10 athlete in the field this year, and I think that if everyone had competed, she would not have been. So I feel like I probably wasn't that far off here relative to what she did. I mean, 2 spots when we take out all the withdrawals, and there she is. Some people have been telling me that she's going to be top 5. You just wait and see. I don't see the numbers to support that yet. So maybe she has the capacity to improve on some of her holes at the games. She's obviously won a couple events at the games, but she also always has some really bad finishes, and just her overall average finish hasn't been good enough to warrant a top 5 ranking. So I think that that's just a little bit of wishful thinking maybe. And of course she's going to train hard. She's very motivated to do well, but this is just about where she is.
Do you care if now I skip around a little bit now that we did 15, do like 2 or 3 more, and then do you want to choose 2 or 3 more, and then we'll go over to the men, or else we'll be here all day?
Yeah, we should. At this point,
I got to get ready for the fights tonight. Dude, Derek Lewis is fighting tonight. Can you guys believe it? Do you watch fights, Hobart?
No, not really. I should get more into it. I have a friend who runs they're not called dojos, studio.
Uh-huh.
But he's really competitive into it. I just never got into it.
Insane UFC fight tonight. Jacqueline Robertson, always supportive, $10. You're the best. Thank you. So what do you think, Brian? Can we skip around a little bit?
Yeah, I think there's 4 women that we have to talk about, and then everyone else, whatever.
Okay, go. You choose them.
So I think we should start with the women that far exceeded my expectations, which are Ariel Lowen and Bailey Rail. And we have talked about them before, and I gave them an acknowledgement. And I've just been trying to think about after the games, like, why were these women so much better than all the women that I like have been to the games before, that they just basically crushed. I mean, Ariel finished 14th and Bailey finished 18th. So not only did they make the top 20, but they weren't the last 2 in the top 20. Like, they still continued to fight and move up. And 14th place finish for Ariel Lowen. It's just like, it's just blowing my mind. I'm not sure how she got so good this year. She's competed in the past. People have reminded me of this, but we did talk about and write about it in the Morning Chalk Up as well. She used to compete as Ariel Armstrong, and her Instagram handle is Ariel Arm. And she was a regional level competitor, and she was, just wasn't good enough to get to the games. And she has some competition experience for sure, but she had said as much that she wasn't coming to the Granite Games to win it. She was coming there to participate, and she ended up winning. And I think she came to the games. I don't know what her expectations were coming to the games, but she far exceeded mine, and I give her all the credit in the world. She was very consistent, and she looked like she was having a blast doing it the entire weekend. And it's a lot of volume, and she's a mom, and she has a full-time job. And I think that her performance this year is incredibly commendable and has to be recognized.
Yeah, and it was definitely a feel-good story the entire week. And every time the camera went on her, I kind of smiled inside.
So that's Ariel. And Bailey Rail, I mean, we talked about it before the week began. This is her first time ever doing a live individual competition. And she placed 18th at the CrossFit Games. And I mean, I really can't think of anything else to say about that, except that she was training with the Mayhem crew for the last couple of months in Cookeville. And obviously they prepare their athletes really well for something like this.
What about, well, let me ask you this. Who really shit the bed? Who didn't get the ranking and fucking dropped the ball and made you look bad?
She already apologized to me, and I feel bad saying it. But on the women's side, the one that I missed by the most in this direction was Carolyn Prevost.
Yeah, that breaks my heart too. Phenomenal athlete, tough competition, but like we said, a lot of people dropped out too, so it could have been her year. What about Sam Briggs? 39-year-old Sam Briggs.
Yeah, I mean, when you remove all the people who dropped out, she would have been 20th on my rankings, and she finished 21st. So she was right there, kind of in the middle where I expected her to be. She almost did enough to make the top 20. She won that event, or she got second in that event, that event number 10, I think. And it just was barely not enough. But she, I mean, at 39 years old, making the games in the elite field is, we've said it before, is pushing the boundaries beyond and beyond. She wants to do it as a 40-year-old next year, and if there's anyone who can do it, I think it's her.
Fantastic. Hobart, do you mind if you and I have a little powwow real quick?
Yeah,
Brian, if you have to get up and pee, you can go pee or do
let's
whatever.
powwow.
On the count of three, based on what you've seen of Brian's work for the women, his predictions and how it turned out, and just figuring all the factors. On the count of three, do a thumbs up for the camera if we keep them for next year, and a thumbs down if we don't. We'll do it together at the same time. Do you need any time to think, or do you know?
No, let's do it. I'm ready.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Wow. Dude, he was sweating balls. Hey, that doesn't get you in the clear, though. We might bring someone in for the men. So let's switch over to the men.
You might bring someone over for the men. This is not nearly as good.
You actually did really amazing for the women. What isn't there some fancy line that you athletes use, Hobart, like trash can fire or dumpster fire? That was a real dumpster fire.
Or a soup sandwich, yeah.
So, yeah, that was a soup sandwich. Just all the pullouts and mask wearing, and man, what a soup sandwich. Who came up with soup sandwich? I've never heard that one. Solid.
I don't actually think I heard that from Pat Sherwood.
Wow. Hats off to Patty. Where is Pat this year? Did he participate in any of the games? Height? Is he retired from the CrossFit scene? What's he doing?
He's doing a podcast with Beyond the Whiteboard. He and Boz do a little podcast.
Wow. I hope they're not taking it. Ryan, can you bleep that out? What Hobart said? I think we're on a 30-second delay.
Yeah, sorry. But it's definitely not as good as this one.
Oh,
that's all I know about it.
Hey, and if you want a clean podcast where guys are like two civilized fucking gentlemen who aren't going to comment on sports bras and whether Josh Bridges' shorts were so tight that you could see his cock and balls, don't come to this one.
Could you really?
No, I don't know, but so many people sent me pictures of his ass and the shorts he was wearing in the competition, and man, his ass was hungry.
Good for him.
Yeah, I know. I kind of like it too. For many reasons. It's mostly because it's fun to make fun of. 2021 CrossFit Games men. Brian Friend's predictions with James Hobart and Sevan Matosian deciding whether we're going to keep him for next year's predictions. We're reviewing his predictions. He's presenting his case to whether he stays on the show as a Nostradamus. Ryan Jevning on the graphics. Matt Souza, I don't know what the hell he's doing. Probably running his gym. Number one, Patrick. You predicted Patrick Vellner would win the CrossFit Games this year.
Before we talk about the men, we'll just set the stage. Set the stage, same as the women, which is there were 4 withdrawals in the men's side of the competition, but none of them were as significant as the women. Whereas 4 of the top 8 that I projected had to withdraw on the women's side. The highest projected withdrawal was Adrian Munweiler, who I had originally had in 17th, then Sean Sweeney, who I'd had in 21st, and also Sam Stewart and Alexander Illen. So there were some withdrawals on this side, but it didn't really affect the overall landscape as much as it did on the women's side.
So for the women, you have a valid note from your mom and dad of why you're sick at school this week. But for the men, you're on your own.
That's right.
Okay.
To make your own excuses. I projected Pat to win. I thought he was going to win. And I actually thought he was going to win all the way up until I saw Justin Medeiros' capacity to do freestanding handstand push-ups. And Dave had said that in the moment in event number 6, when Vellner and Fikowski ran to the barbell and missed their clean, and Medeiros ran up behind them and hit that to beat the buzzer by less than a second and steal that event win, that's the moment that Medeiros won the games. But I disagree with Dave on that. I do think it was a very significant moment, but there were a lot of significant moments that came after that. That deadlifting, freestand, and handstand push-up workout was a home run for Vellner, and he needed to make up 30 points in the last two events, or 37 points in the last two events to do it. He went on and won the event, which I thought he would do, but Medeiros was clearly the second best in that workout across all the heats and all the men that did the workout. And at that point, for me, it was like, this is game over. This guy is the fittest this weekend.
Hobart has something to say.
No, I was just at that point though. I thought even if Vellner didn't win, like Medeiros basically had to, in terms of points, could Vellner have caught him in points? Like Medeiros had to take like a last in the final two events or something like that, right?
No, not necessarily. I mean, 37 points. It was a 5-point margin. So let's just say that Vellner wins the event number 14, and Medeiros finishes 7th, which is that I thought he would finish like 6th to 10th in that workout, and that Vellner would make up 25 to 30 points, and that it'd be within 10 or 15 points going into the final event. Now, I didn't know that Medeiros was going to absolutely obliterate everyone on the final event also, but
was that his only event win of the weekend, the final?
It was.
What a weapon.
Yeah. How about that guy finished event 13 in third place, event 14 in second place, and event 15 in first place? That to me is like the reason why.
Well, but
there's no question. That's why. I mean, I thought Pat Vellner was going to win too, especially going to the last day. I thought he was going to come back. I agree with Brian. I think that handstand push-up workout, like the fact that Medeiros was able to do what he did there and basically neutralize Vellner in that workout.
Not just that workout, because the 4 workouts prior to the final, Vellner's finishes were 5th, 3rd, 2nd, 1st. He did that 3rd, 2nd, 1st on the events 12, 13, 14, and then Medeiros did on 13, 14, 15. So Vellner was doing everything he could to try to claw back after having his really bad event 1 and a terrible execution of event 8. But it just ended up that he'd given away too many points to a guy who was not giving away anything from beginning to end of the competition.
Number 2, Jason Hopper. Jason Hopper. Hey, you don't know how hard that was for me to say that. You don't know how hard for me it was to do that joke.
But you did.
I know.
That's all right.
That hurts. It's like making fun of one of my family members. Jason Hopper. Sorry. Ryan, edit that part out too, please. Jason Hopper.
That should just be the clip for the entire podcast.
Jason Hopper. Well, first of all, we had a chance to talk to him a couple of days ago, and he went through his thoughts and what I think is a very honest, humble, and realistic evaluation of the weekend from his perspective. And a lot of people have recognized that and reached out to us and said, man, I mean, I was being pretty critical of him about his performance relative to the hype, but this is a pretty honest and humble reflection by a rookie. So if you haven't heard that one and you feel whatever you feel about him, you might want to listen to it.
Hey, I disagree with you.
You disagree? You don't think people should go listen to it?
No, that part. Yeah, you should definitely listen to it, or just at least play it on YouTube so we get the money for it. You don't have to actually watch it. Just push play and walk away from your computer. But listen, I like Jason Hopper a lot. I think we're courting each other to be friends. And I'm flattered that he wants to be friends with me. That being said, compare him to Colton Mertens. Colton Mertens is like, I fucked up. I'm going home, fixing this fucking shit. Done. Jason Hopper's like got some other. Jason Hopper has some of that in him, but he's got some other thoughts too. He's got some analysis of the game that I'm concerned might not be relevant. He's like that guy who sent you the
Horvath Adams thing. Yeah.
Yeah. The email. Like, I don't think Hopper needs to worry about if there was too much skill or too much swimming or too much running or if the workouts were for him or not for him. And I do hear him talk about that a little bit. And I on the complete opposite end, I see Mr. Mertens he went to a gunfight and he lost, and he's going home and practicing shooting and adding 2 more guns to his arsenal. I mean, he's sorry, horrible analogy. I just hear, I don't want to say excuses, but I feel that there's some leak. I feel there's a leak in the commitment, a leak in the focus. To say he's making excuses would be too harsh, but I sense a leak, and I don't like that. And let me ask you this, Hobart. Let's say he's just being honest with us. what should an athlete do? Should he not tell the podcast that, or and push it down and hide it? Like, I would push that shit down and hide it.
I mean, I don't know. I think it's fine if you share that kind of stuff. It just depends what he does in the next 300 some odd days, right? Like, so if you go back home and now your whole job as an athlete, excuse me, your whole job as an athlete just becomes analyzing events and looking at, well, what was it that about that event that I didn't do well? There's that next step of like, great, here's why I didn't do well. And then here's all the things I'm going to train to do better next time. So he might be doing that. Like, he's a really successful athlete outside of CrossFit. Like, I imagine he's someone who's going to go back home and get to work. That might suck him in as far as like, hey, I'm a really successful athlete, so maybe something about this weekend wasn't me. But I don't know Jason terribly well. I think he had an awesome season. I imagine you'll see him come back and fix a lot of his issues if he wants to.
It definitely sounds like he wants to.
Yeah.
Did you when you took second place this weekend, you fought back and came hard. You had you pulled the Patrick Vellner. You came out and just shit the bed and had to fight your way back all weekend. Did those thoughts creep into your mind? Like, hey, Dave, fuck the programming up on this?
No, not once, but I saw a 4.5 mile run and I said, oh, I'm going to do shitty at that. And I know why I'm going to do shitty at that. And I saw the 1 rep max snatch and I actually outperformed on that, but I was like, I don't think I'm going to do great, but I did better than I thought I would. And I know why I wouldn't do great. And I know if I want to compete again, what I'm going to do next year,
Put X-Lax in Casper Bauer's coffee.
No. Well, he's not in my age division anymore. And I think everyone's beatable. I wouldn't compete if I didn't. But there's a reason he was the champion this year and I wasn't.
Well, that Hopper does have that. He does think everyone's beatable. Yeah. So,
also just want to just point out a couple things is, BKG 26th his first year at the games. Everyone knows his resume sense. Kristen Holt, 17th their first year at the games. 5 straight 7th place or better recently. Katrin Davidsdottir, 31st and 26th their first 2 years at the games. Comes back 2 years later.
And then it's a huge fucking thing that Katrin did too. Then she missed the games.
Right.
And then came back as a dominant force. I mean, that's fucking impressive what she did. That's crazy impressive.
So there are people like Patrick Vellner, who shows up at the games and gets 3rd his first year. Or even Noah Olson, who shows up at the games and gets 8th his first year and go on to have very impressive careers. But it's not unprecedented for someone, very talented athlete, to come along and have a below or sub, an average to below average finish at the games as a rookie, especially a young rookie, and learn a lot from it and come back in a year or two later, be right up there in the mix. So I have people sending me things on Instagram. I'll bet you $100 Hopper never places top 10. And I'm like, that's a pretty bold thing to say. I mean, he was very raw and unprepared this year and made it through to the final cut despite I don't think he had a single good workout this weekend.
Betsy 007, blaming the programming rather than addressing the weakness is an easy out. I don't know if you're saying that Hopper did that, but I don't want to go on record as saying Hopper did that. I don't want to. He didn't blame the programming. He didn't go that far. Just saying, I heard something in his voice, in his description. I wish I could quote it, but that blame's too harsh. Let me just say that. I didn't get the fact he wasn't like, fuck Dave, he's an idiot. And I've heard games athletes say that. Like, I mean, I haven't heard Annie say that in I think in one of the years, like when they had the softball toss or something. She's like, that's not CrossFit. It's in the behind the scenes. And it's like, yo. Like, that's probably not where you want to go.
I think there's something you have to remember too. Like, so Hopper wins his semifinal, excuse me. Right. So we know he has the
same thing.
Yeah. We know he has the ability to win, and he shows up at the games and gets 19th. Like, it's easy from the outside looking in to look at greatness. And I think all of these athletes in terms of competitive CrossFit are great. And so he's top half in arguably a really talented field, maybe one of the more talented fields we've seen. And so it's like, I just think it's so easy when people are like, well, he's just whining and complaining. Yeah, he probably had really high expectations for himself. So he should be fucking upset, like he should go home and be like, wow, man, I thought I could get top 5, or Brian Friend said I was going to get number 2 and I let him down. And it just depends on what he does with it next. And I think it's fine for everyone to criticize him, but I just don't think people really understand what it's like to be in that kind of position of greatness.
And look at all the time we're giving him.
Yeah.
Brent Fikowski.
Yep, I projected him 30, finished 3rd. I mean, he was very consistent on the weekend. He had one really bad workout, the running toe to bar workout, and he was pretty impressive otherwise. He didn't win as many events. Actually, he won 4 events his rookie year. Since then, it's been 5 years competing at the games, and he's only won 3. But he still had several solid performances. I think he was, I know that BKG was kind of closing in on him towards the end of the weekend, but I think he was like pretty clearly the third best guy that weekend. And finished right where he belonged.
He was scrappy. He was scrappy. So Lindsay Sneed says, can we talk about him having a full-time job until maybe a month before the games? Lindsay, so that's like our point. Like
you're talking about Hopper, right?
Yeah, Hopper. Like it's one thing to say that, okay, but it's another thing to say that and use that as an excuse. So like, I mean, Colton Merton had the hardest job in the world and made it to the games. You know what I mean? And slept 6 hours a night or whatever. And he was up at 4 a.m. and training at midnight. I mean, like.
And Ariel Lowen, we talked about, has a full-time job and multiple kids.
Yeah, but I hear what you're saying, Lindsay, but go ahead, Hobart. Go ahead.
Yeah, just neither of those guys won the games. So it doesn't matter. Jason Hopper wants to win the games. And people always ask me, they're like, not always, but at seminars, I want to be a games athlete. What do I do? And I'm like, do you have a job? Yes, quit it. Jason, but it's the truth, like Matt Fraser wasn't bagging groceries. I mean, maybe that's what Jason needs. Like, I think you can look at it and say, hey, yeah, well, he had a job, and in light of that, he did great, which I agree. But I said, if this guy wants to win the games next year, he's like, maybe if I can not work, that 19th becomes a podium.
Well, it's going to be more than that. But not only that, you can observe it as something you have to fix, but I don't think you can use it as an excuse.
Yeah, I agree.
I just like there has to be a distinction there, because it's the kind of mindset that uses it as an excuse that is indicative of a bigger problem in the head. So that's my thoughts. But what do I know? Although I was the best cameraman at the game, so I guess I was the best at something. Number 4, Noah Olson.
Yeah, I had him 4th. He finished 10th, so I'd say that this was another miss on my part. Didn't do as well as I thought he would do this year. And just in the little bit that I've heard him talk about it since then, I don't think there's any real excuse that he's giving or reason or anything. It's just that's where he fell this year.
I want to say this about Noah. I'm curious what you think, James. All of these other mistakes that Brian's made have been his fault. He fucked up and didn't look in his crystal ball clearly. He should have sprayed some Windex on that thing and shined it. This one is all Noah's fault. Noah has no fucking business taking 10th place. If he lived next door to me, I would fucking put him over my knee and paddle him. He's too fucking good. It's fucking unacceptable. That one is not Brian's fault.
I'm trying to see where he got tripped up this weekend.
He's too fucking good. He's too good of a guy. He's too good of an athlete, and he's put too much into it. I don't want to say the word deserve. I hate that. But he does need a spanking.
Roger that.
He just had a lot of middle of the pack finishes. And when you'll see some of these other guys that end up placing ahead of him, they had some home runs. He didn't have really any of those this year.
Okay, Dingus Health Lifestyle, 20 burpees, buddy. Don't write that shit in the comments, flopper. Jason's gonna see that and gonna hate me. You're in big trouble, buddy. 20 burpees. No one else write flopper in there again. Number 5, the great Scott Panchik, who he could have been the podium. Though everyone's lucky his knee was fucked up.
You think he could have?
Yes.
I don't think he could have been podium. I think he could have been 5th. No, he finished 11th. I'm counting it as a miss here, but I really don't think it's much of a miss. It's if he was able to run, I think he would have been at 6th at worst.
Man, dude, even the commentators are like, man, look at him shake on those thrusters when he would lower the bar and it would land on his clavicle or whatever that is, because that one leg just was not holding up. I mean, it was like a broken coffee table leg. And like the kind you had in your coffee table in college in your living room, and you're like, don't set the bong there, that thing was fucked up, man. Yeah, I'm gonna say Scott would have podium. I'm gonna say Scott could have won the games. Hey, he was in the right mindset. Thank you, Dingus. Well done. Anything else you want to say about Scott? Did he deserve the Spirit of the Games award?
Yeah, in context, everything. I think so.
Agree.
Again, I've always been a huge fan, and I know it's like the games just test fitness, but I don't know. I'm always a huge fan of anyone who's active in the community. And Scott has been active in the community, affiliate owner, started a competition. He's invested, and that's very, very cool.
I like
I say bullshit that he's going to retire. I think he's I think he's at home right now, being like, "Holy shit! If my knee would have been better, I could have fucking won that thing."
I don't know.
I don't know either, Hobart. That's what this show's about.
Well, I disagree.
Bjork, Carl. What you say his name? Say his
Bjorken.
first name. Bjork. Well, say it,
Bjorken.
Brian.
Björgvin Karl Gudmundsson.
Björgvin Karl Gudmundsson from the great country of Iceland. 300,000 people, more CrossFit gyms per capita than anywhere in the world. And you could look at their family history, and everyone on that island is related to each other. That's always kind of weird.
Remember I mentioned that 26th in his rookie year?
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight years of 8th or better. Now he has 2 podiums. This is his next best finish, 4th place. He wasn't 100% healthy coming into this week, and I knew that. And he still almost chased down Fikowski and got on the podium. I think he surprised himself a little bit based on what I had heard from his camp prior to the weekend. But guy's amongst the best that we've ever seen. And when you talk about consistency over time, so incredible performance for him, and just add it to the list. He's top of the sport. I mean, he's right there with all these guys.
This next one, this is the one that puts Brian's job in jeopardy. This next one. This is going to be a tough pill to swallow, people. Everyone sit down and relax. Maybe take a bathroom break. Justin Medeiros, the 2021 CrossFit Games champion. You had him ranked. Look, Brian's video just went out.
Oh. Sorry. Yeah, Justin Medeiros. Oh, no, I don't feel bad about this at all. I mean, I had included him in my list of 4 people who could win the games, and I basically said I don't know enough about him yet. Obviously, people can say, well, what do you mean you don't know enough about him? He was 3rd place last year at the games. But yeah, he was 3rd last year. It was a very different test. We talked about how he'd had some success at sanctionals, winning the Filthy 150, almost winning the Granite Games, minus not really understanding how to use a sandbag that year, and that he had a ton of potential. He was better than I thought. Across this entire test, he did not have a single bad performance. 15th was his worst placing. And the events he was worst on are some of the events that I'm least concerned about, like the run, like the 550-yard sprint, which is, I think, kind of a specialty type thing. And I'll always take the generalist, like the generally awesome guy, over the guy who excels in 1 or 2 things. So, and I said, I think you asked me a couple of weeks ago or a week ago or so, this is the guy to beat right now. He's young. He's very fit. His midline is super strong. He's got all the skills and the tools, and he's still getting stronger. Like he's been getting stronger, and he's going to continue to get stronger, I think. So he's going to be a tough guy to unseat. And he earned this victory. I counted as a miss ranking him 7th and having him finish 1st, but I don't feel bad about the fact that I had him 7th on the power rankings coming into the weekend.
I think what happened is Jason Hopper beat him at the MAC.
He did,
and that fucked you all up. That got you all scrambled, like a pretty girl smiling at you from across the room, and you thought she liked you, but she didn't. She just was being courteous. I think that scrambled your brain a little bit. Speaking of pretty girls, if we could take a break in the show real quick, I'm looking at this. Danielle Brandon is taking a really long drive right now, and someone asked her who is the best podcast host.
Oh boy!
Did you listen to it? Did you listen to it?
Fucking boy! No, I didn't listen to it.
You have to listen to it. You have to listen to it. Otherwise, you're going to be wrong here.
Look what she put.
She can't tag you. She lists you and then me when she speaks, but she can't tag you.
Brian, friend. Hey, buddy. I just have what I have. You can say all you want, but I'm a guy who goes by the facts. Maybe I'll check it out later. But best podcast host, Brian Friend from Danielle Brandon. And her eyes are closed. Imagine if you could see what she's visualizing right there. By the way, I like her hair. I'm not a fan of like weird colored dyed hairs or nose rings or like big old hoops in the ears or any of that, like the big old gauges. Brian's a runaway freight train. So going back, I think that you got confused by Hopper and beating Medeiros at the MAC. I think you disrespected Matt Fraser. That was his horse that he picked to win the games, and you're on the Dave Castro bandwagon, and he picked Hopper, so you picked Hopper. And I think you've been misguided and bamboozled.
Okay.
Hobart?
Yes.
Thank you. That's rare. What timestamp that 12:20? Hobart agreed with me and not Brian. Number 8, Cole Sager. I'm shocked at his finish actually.
Well, he barely got into the top 20. He was the last guy in 20th place. After one event, he moved all the way up to 10th place, and then he just kind of ended up in the mix there in 14th. I would say that this was underwhelming games for him relative to the expectations. I'm counting it as a miss for me. And I think it's similarly to the Noah Olsen scenario. I don't really think there's any excuse here that I've heard from Cole. This is just as good as he was this week.
Hobart, have you worked out with Cole Sager?
I have not.
Oh, that actually shocked me. Have you worked out with BKG, Hobart?
No, I don't think we have worked out together, but we competed together in 2014.
You like him, huh?
A lot, yeah. I think he's got all the right stuff to be a podium athlete, and he's a good dude.
Yeah, he is a good dude, right? He's I can't wait to get him on the podcast. The little bit that I've hung out with him, he's funny. He's enjoyable to be around. He's a gentleman. Yeah. You know what we forgot to ask Medeiros is Medeiros doesn't have any tattoos, does he?
We didn't forget to ask him anything. We just couldn't hear him.
Oh, right. Thank you. Right. We're perfect. The technology failed us. Thank you. Chandler Smith, you picked him to be 9th. I think that's another guy who's got an insane body and got a lot of hype behind him, but I think that you made a mistake picking him as 9th. I think that's the only time I've said that. I've liked all your picks, but I think picking him at 9th was a mistake.
No, I mean, and look,
he finished 21st, by the way.
He did. He missed. Cole Sager bumped him out for the last spot inside the top 20, and maybe he moves up a few spots if he gets into the top 20. Maybe he doesn't. Who knows? But either way, I would say that once again, this is a miss, and you'll see it on the men's side relative to the women's. There's a lot more misses. I think and this is like this every single competition I've ever done this for. It's a lot more difficult to pin down the men. There's a lot. I think there's just a lot more guys who on any given weekend can upset the balance, can make a top 5 or a top 10. Whereas on the women's side, it's pretty consistent over the last 5 to 7 years. So Chandler didn't have it this week. He didn't have it at the Granite Games, in my opinion. I thought that he would use that interim time period to improve or whatever. I mean, that's what Bergeron usually does. Usually his guys are okay and good enough at the regional or the semifinal level and excellent at the games. And now we've talked about Cole Sager, Chandler Smith, and Katrin Davidsdottir, who all underperformed, and Amanda Barnhart, who did what I'm going to say is about what I expected her to do. So none of them exceeded expectations this year. And that's why there are questions, some of them I think even in the comments today, but I've gotten a lot on Instagram about what's going on with Bergeron's group. How come they're not doing as well at the games as they usually do?
I don't like that talk.
Okay.
Do you like that talk? Like when people blame whole camps?
Well, I think that in general, there's just a big question mark this year about, and we've briefly talked about it, about is this training camp method effective for producing the best results at the CrossFit Games? Based on this year, the answer is obviously no. But it's also the first year that a lot of those camps have been in existence, and I think that there's a lot of opportunity for them to improve on how they're running those camps over a total time of a year or, leading into next year's games, and that might change next year.
Look at Rich's camp. Look at the Mayhem Empire. Bunch of athletes shit the bed. Bunch of athletes dominated.
You're talking about from Rich's camp specifically? Some did well, some did not?
Yeah, the Mayhem Empire, yeah.
Okay. Who shit the bed?
Samuel.
Well, he was literally shitting the bed. I think he was
Right, literally.
He had one of the
Ro-
most impressive performances of the entire weekend on event 2, and I was like, oh shit, maybe this guy's as good as he says he is. And then he basically was a shell of himself at like 2 events later and the rest of the competition, as he claimed he was very sick.
Yeah, he drank the water in the lake. I think something's wrong with that lake. That's just a rumor, but I think something's wrong with the lake. Haley Adams didn't perform up to expectations, right?
By 2 spots.
Okay. I'll be wrong on both those. And but you guys are just helping my argument. I'm about to pivot. Royce Dunn.
Exceeded expectations, and we already talked about Bailey Rail exceeded expectations.
Aha. So camps are good. That's my point. So go Hobart.
None of those people, Cornway, Bailey Rail, or Royce Dunn, live and train with Rich all year round.
Okay.
They come to the camp 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the games, and start training there. I think that is the more effective method, is to do a majority of your training all year long on your own or in your own setting, and then to have maybe a more focused games prep with a couple other competitive athletes leading into the games. And that's what Bergeron has done in the past. They've had that Cape Cod camp thing where the people would come in for a couple weeks at a time and train, instead of having Samuel Quant and Amanda Barnhart and everyone move to New England and spend the whole season there with Katrin.
Oh, that's a catchy Cape Cod camp. Cape Cod camp. Camp Cape Cod. I would go with Camp Cape Cod. That's catchy. Yanikoski. He's probably going to hate me for saying this, but I thought he did fucking amazing. He probably wanted to win, but man, I thought he looked amazing.
I had actually, I'd had him ranked even higher. I had him ranked 7th, even ahead of Medeiros, I think, in my original rankings, but I just had a feeling he wasn't 100%. He is having like a ton of tape on his shoulders in all his videos leading into the games. So I dropped him down to 10th. I think he was phenomenal. I'm with you. I was very impressed, but he's a great athlete. I think he's got finishes of 6th, 7th, 8th, and 10th in his career in the games that he hasn't had to withdraw. That's incredibly impressive resume. I have him inside the top 20 all time on the fittest men to ever compete at the CrossFit Games for a reason. When he's able to finish the whole test, he's very, very good. And he was very good this weekend again.
James and Austin should start a camp in Boston. Dave Honeycutt.
Thanks, Dave. I don't live in Boston anymore, though.
Hey, those are just, you're not, come on, James. Those are just details. Okay, James, and how about, let me reread it. This is what Dave Honeycutt meant. Sorry, I fucked it up. James and Austin should start a camp. How's that? Now respond.
That's better.
Hobart?
Austin's the enemy. He ages up next year. I'm trying to convince him to do masters. So.
The enemy.
Yeah.
The frenemy. Samuel Cornway. We should have him on again because I say his name so well.
I mean, we already talked about him. It does seem like he was sick relatively early on in the competition, so I don't think we got to see the full capacity that he has to offer. And that just isn't, that's unfortunate, but that's how it goes sometimes.
And I bet you he's going to be better next year.
It feels that way. It feels like he has the potential to be.
Yeah. Number 12. This is just a brilliant pick on your part. This is another reason why you probably keep your job for another year. Lazar Jukic. I don't know how the hell you picked him, but man, what a stud.
Lazar, I mean, I knew he had the potential to do well at a high level competition because he's done it before at Dubai. But I think that, getting to talk to him when we did, like, that was one of the most refreshing parts of the week. Those guys are very fun, but they're also very, very good. And he in particular stood out to me on a lot of events that I think are pretty tough events. And I was like, ooh, I got to see if he can hang here. And he was still putting together top 10 performances, a couple top 5s, a first and a second on back-to-back events. I think he has a lot of the kind of untangible skills, the running and the swimming, but even like the capacity to, what was this workout he's really struggled on? Event 13. So like getting under the heavy yoke, I think was that was what I think event 18 was a yoke, wasn't it?
13.
Yeah, yoke.
So he struggled with the yoke. And And so maybe he can stand to, like, to me, that just telling me that he can, if he maybe just builds up the midline a little bit more this year, that this 9th place finish can actually maybe be even a lot better than that.
Ryan, how much more of your time do we have? Okay, that's perfect. That's the awesome answer. Number 13, Saxon Panchik.
Yeah, so I mean, that's another one that I would say I missed on here. He finished 5th, and it was incredibly impressive. And I think that people should be concerned about him as a threat going forward. He seems to have all the tools. He's a great lifter. He's got great midline stability. He lacks a little bit of power relative to some of the bigger guys, but that's only going to come out in 1 or 2 events. I think that one of his worst finishes was in that. Was it that biking event? Event 9, yeah, 29th place, the biking power snatch. So he can work on his maybe like power output on machines type stuff to even improve a little bit more. That was when I worked out next to Matt Fraser at the Granite Games. That was something I was really blown away with, was how powerful he was on the machines. So I think that Saxon can stand to put in a little bit of work there, and it's not unprecedented for a guy of that size to be able to hang with some of the bigger guys on the Echo Bike or the rower or whatever, especially in shorter time domains. But overall, incredibly impressive season for him. A winner of a semifinal, 5th place at the CrossFit Games. All the credit to him, and I will not be underrating him in the future.
Hobart, talk to me about increasing your power output on the bike. I mean, I know the easy answer to say, I was going to ask you, is that possible? I know the easy answer is yes, but I'm kind of a dummy. I don't want to believe that. I want to believe that is really hard to do, especially in the shorter time domains.
No, I don't think it is. And I think this is one of the things I think might struggle with the training camps, is that you get used to beating the same people on the same events. And therefore, you might not be tapping into some levels of fitness or intensity that you need to in order to get better at those things, because you're just better at them with your surrounding training partners. So
And
I definitely, it's Matt Fraser is a really good example of this. Like, Matt got much better at rowing and on the bike. And when he would get on those events, especially for someone who's shorter, like bike rower, equal level of fitness, typically is going to go the way of the bigger guy. I mean, Fikowski smashed that event 9, even though he has to move that barbell a further distance. So short answer, I definitely think it's something you can get better at. Unfortunately, it's just a really painful thing to get better at. It just sucks. Like, I don't think I've ever beat my 2K PR, because the first time I did it, my body was so stupid. But now I know what that pain is like, and it's so hard to go there.
That's interesting. So if you're the best guy in the gym, that's interesting. That's very interesting that you say that about if you're beating everyone in your camp. And not only that, you could take it one step further, and you could know if you're going to do 3 workouts, you know which one you're going to win, so you don't feel as bad for losing the other 2.
And I think it's really hard to self-regulate and be like, well, I know I'm good at this one, so I'm going to, and I'm bad at the other 2. But I'm going to go really hard at the other 2 because I want to get better. I think it's really hard to fight that temptation to not play to your strengths. It's so hard, especially when there's like, when you win, your coach is like, great, you beat everybody. Nice job. Like, you really need someone to be there and be like, hey, that was good, but you should try harder on the ones you suck at, even if it causes you to lose.
I don't know if this is true. Bestie 007 said Saxon is with Mayhem now. Is there truth to that?
No idea.
I also don't know. Well, oh no, actually I do. He's coached by Facundo, and Facundo is taking over the programming for Mayhem Athletes. So I guess via that route, yes.
Wow.
Well, then that's a yes.
Wow. And Scott was on the team one year, right?
He was.
So they definitely have a relationship there. Wow, that's interesting. I wonder if he'll move to Cookeville. He's got 2 kids now,
I don't
right?
think he moved to Cookeville, because him and his brother own CrossFit Cliffside, and I think they're pretty happy that training there and living there.
Jason Miller, Dave knows the lake is bad. One of his tests is adversity. He's a true taskmaster. That's why he's a SEAL trainer. All right. Make them swim in a bowl of diarrhea and see who comes out alive. All right, fine. Number 14. One more thing on Saxon Panchik. Can he be a threat to Justin Medeiros?
When I say that I'm not going to underrate him in the future, and I was actually thinking about this, I still don't think I can rank him ahead of any of the guys who beat him this year, because they've been so good for so long. So until I actually see him in a competition beat Medeiros, beat Vellner, beat Fikowski, beat BKG, I just have to have him in the tier right below that.
But do you think Vellner's a threat next year for Medeiros?
Yes.
A serious threat?
Yes.
Number 14, Jeffrey Adler.
Picked him 14th, finished 13th. I think that's about exactly where he falls relative to this field.
Boss. Number 15, Travis Mayer.
Almost echo the same thing as with Jeff. I had him 15th. He finished 12th. He was in 15th going into the final event. I knew that last event was going to be great for him, and I was going to have to do some burpees, which I did do, by the way, to pay my dues to Travis. 12th he's had some finishes around there in previous years at the games. To still be doing it as he's getting older, as his family's getting bigger with the other things he has going on, he has a high level of commitment to being great in this sport. And he's like I said, he's not in that top tier, but he's in that next group of guys. He's flirting with the top 10 regularly over his career. Very impressive to be able to do that, especially with everything else he has going on in his life that a lot of these athletes don't have. So good games week for Travis. But yeah, again, like Adler, just this is the kind of where he falls relative to these guys.
I'll let you pick. I have two that I'd like to talk about. There's obviously a bunch more. Anyone else you want to talk about in the men before I bring up the two random guys?
Similarly to the women, I just want to give the accolades to the other two guys. There's three guys that I really missed on here who did way better than I thought. We talked about Royce Dunn, and we talked about earlier how I think there was actually a good balance in this test between strength and skills. And Royce, for a big guy, has both of those things in a really good kind of a balanced way. So, I had picked him to make it out of the Auditorium Pro, and a lot of people they were being critical of me for that. But he obviously showed his merit here at the games by finishing 16th, and he was higher than that for a lot of the weekend. So, excellent weekend for Royce Dunn. I'm very happy for him. Henry Kepalainen, didn't know much about him coming into the games, makes the final cut, finishes 18th. Curious to see if he can parlay this into future success in the sport, or if he's going to be kind of a one and done type of guy. So definitely we'll be looking for him in the next year or two to see if he can have another good season and good run at the games. And then last is Guy Maeros. I had him ranked last. He ends up finishing 7th. He has 3 event wins in what I consider to be very specialist style events. 550-yard sprint. It's not going to show up every year at the games, and if it does, maybe it's one event. The next 2 events were lifting events, or like a lifting and fat and short distance running event. So he's very good at short distance running, and he's very good at Olympic lifting. He was obviously good enough at the rest of the stuff to have an incredible performance, earned the 7th place, earned the Rookie of the Year. I don't know if he'll ever have as high a finish at the games again as he did this year. And I think that a lot of people probably can get on me for that, but I will certainly not rank him this low going forward, but I don't know that I would rank him this high. And in a little bit of just putting things in perspective, no male from South America has ever finished higher than like 33rd or 34th at the games prior to this season. So
I knew it.
What?
I knew it. So there's racists. Those are people who, I don't know what the word is. There's racists. Those are people if they judge you by the color of your skin. Like they make, I guess they I don't know, but they look at skin color. Then there's ageist. They look at like people's age, right? Like they determine shit by people's age. They have preconceived presuppositions. Then there's sexists, and they judge people by like their capability based on their vagina and their cock and balls. And then I don't know what this one is, but it's what continent you're from. And Brian judges people from what continent they're from.
You didn't let me finish.
Okay, fine. Go ahead before I fucking accuse you. And by the way, can someone figure out what that word is? That's probably a great word. Go ahead, Brian. Sorry, finish. You were talking about him being from South America, and I knew it.
We've been waiting for someone who's not from Europe or North America, and it could be Asia or I should say, or Australia. It could be Oceania. Someone from Asia or Africa or South America to break through and have a top 10 type performance at the CrossFit Games. And we thought we might get it with Roman Krennikov, but he's never been able to come. Jason Smith has been kind of the flag bearer for South for Africa, but he hasn't had a performance this good. And now we have Guy Mayeros, who is, basically saying like South America is now on the radar in terms of having a high level competitive CrossFitter in the men's field. And so, if he's able to have another year like this next year, then I will take serious note of this guy as someone who can challenge some of the top men in the sport.
And will that change your whole perception of South America, and you'll stop being a continentist? No,
I mean, I think that James can acknowledge this too. It's like,
Sevan, do you need another coffee or something?
No.
Jesus.
Like there is such a thing as training age, and you just can't make up for it in a short amount of time in certain ways. And so the sport is newer in those parts of the world than it is in the aforementioned parts. And it's only a matter of time between the men and the women there get good enough to be relevant at the top. And maybe we're starting to turn that corner.
Yeah. Well, if it makes you feel any better, I'm a continentist too. I don't think anyone from Africa or South America is going to win the games for a long time. But I do think that Guy's going to do extremely well next year. He's so young. Jason Smith, we got to get him on the podcast.
And this guy on YouTube is right. Jason did have a 10th place finish at the games.
Yep.
Who Jason Smith did?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Where I don't see his name on there. Where how did I miss him?
Event 2. I think.
No, I don't see his name on this list,
Oh,
Brian.
30th/26th.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I wanted to ask you about. I wanted to say something. So, someone up here said, "Why do you guys have a hard on for Travis Mayer? Why does everyone have a hard on for Travis Mayer?" The problem is, no one has a hard on for Travis Mayer. That's the point, Bug. He is so freaking good. He's such a staple in the community, and he does, and in the events that he does well on. You don't want to get me started. I've talked about it in other podcasts. It's fucking insane. He won an event and they didn't put the camera on him once during the event. Once. Think about that. Some of the broadcast was like, imagine if you were watching a football game and the quarterback threw the ball and they didn't show you where the ball went and they just kept the camera on the quarterback. And then the commentators didn't even tell you it was an interception run back for a touchdown. That's how the fucking broadcast was. And Travis Mayer paid the price for it. So those of us, it's constant. It was like that in the semifinals. It's always like that with them.
You have a super soft spot for parent athletes, though.
True.
Yeah.
I'm biased.
100%.
Totally biased.
Just a couple of ones I saw in the comments. I should give a shout out to Andre Houdet also. He had a great games. He finished 15th. I projected him 24th, so he should be included in that group for commendable and excellent performance with a bright future, I think. And then someone was asking about Wildis Upanex. I ranked him 31st. He finished 25th. Wildis has a lot of potential. He just needs to, get a little bit more well-rounded. He's very good at all the stuff that it takes to get to the games, I think. But then when he gets there, he gets exposed a little bit on certain implements. So tremendous. I've always been a huge Wildis Upanex fan. I've been paying attention to him for a few years. And, he's just missing the like well-roundedness that you need to be in the top half of the field at the games.
Alrighty, guys. I have a bunch of questions, but we've been doing this long enough. James Hobart, thanks for coming on. I've never seen you take so many deep breaths. I hope I didn't get you too wild up. I hope it wasn't my 2 cups of Good Dude's coffee.
No, it was great.
Ryan, thanks for running the YouTube. You killed it. Brian, sorry. One quick little bit detail to take care of. James, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Shall we keep Brian a thumbs up as we keep Brian for next year to do the male? What's it called? Nostradamus stuff to predict the males, and a thumbs down as we don't. 1, 2, 3. Wow.
In sync.
Wow.
Bring him
Feels
back.
like Gladiator. It's very nervous.
Wow.
That's how I wanted you to feel.
Guys, thanks for tuning in. We have an exciting week coming up ahead. Don't miss Monday, 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Jason Witt, if you want to watch his last fight with the UFC, it was 2 weeks ago. It's an incredible, incredible fight. I don't want to tell you who won, but it is a bloodbath. He'll be our guest on Monday. And like I said, I think we have Rich, Sarah, and the great Bjorgvin Carl Goodmanson also lined up. Wait, we need Brian to tell us how to play two-person Catan. Heidi, if you
Heidi,
were to...
I'll tell you. I'll reach out to you on Instagram, Heidi.
Nope.
Heidi, don't. Heidi, don't.
Brian also has a solitary Catan rule sheets too, so just in case.
That's how I make sure I always win.